this edition of RPP News. Anger over the possible release of Frankston serial killer. Last-minute pleas at the final Shire budget meeting, and the SES helps us prepare for the winter weather. Hello, I'm Catie Sharp. Welcome to the latest edition of RPP News, bringing you stories from across Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula. Anger is growing at the prospect of Frankston serial killer Paul Denyer being released from prison next year. Sentenced to life imprisonment in 1993, Denyer will be eligible for parole in June 2023, 30 years after he took the lives of 3 young women. The news has compelled Troy Freem, brother of one of the victims, to speak out against this possibility. Troy's sister Deborah Freem was 22 years old and the mother of a 2-week-old baby when Denyer murdered her. Troy told Channel 9 News Denyer was an evil man who didn't belong in the community. David Limbrick, who was the boyfriend of 17-year-old victim Natalie Russell, has also been actively opposing the killer's release, protesting at state parliament with Natalie's parents. Meanwhile, over 26,000 people have signed a petition calling on the Parole Board of Australia and the Premier of Victoria, Dan Andrews, to remove the option of parole for Denyer. The petition was set up by Nathan Auld, whose sister was the best friend of Denyer's third victim, 18-year-old Elizabeth Stevens. Voices of Mornington Peninsula has called for the Shire to reinstate $200,000 of funding for carbon offsets in the upcoming budget. The decision to stop the funding, which was made after a heated debate last month, means the council may lose its carbon neutral status. Save Western Port and Extinction Rebellion added their support, saying carbon credits are a useful short-term tool in the fight against climate change, while other longer-term and more effective solutions to reducing net carbon emissions are developed. The issue was raised again at the council's final budget meeting on Tuesday, and RPP's Brendan Telfer was there.
Dissent erupted in the public gallery when it was realised that Council had voted down by a margin of 5-6 an amendment brought by Councillor Catie McCafferty that would have reinstated the Shire's $200,000 allocation to buy offshore carbon credits. Councillor Steve Holland had challenged that scheme, saying ratepayers would much rather a peninsula offset program monitored and managed locally. Catie McCafferty disagreed and claimed that the Shire's carbon responsibility spreads beyond the peninsula and is part of a global climate crisis. At Monday's budget session, she proposed an amendment to reinstate the $200,000. However, her argument again failed. She left the meeting soon after, while the dissent in the gallery was brought under control by Chair Councillor Anthony Marsh, who threatened to take the meeting in camera. Climate issues aside, the 2022-2023 budget was well received. Mornington Shire CEO John Baker saying changing economic circumstances such as inflation will make things more difficult, and although rates have been increased by 1.75%, the Shire has delivered a balanced $270 million budget that measures up very favourably when compared to other councils.
Oh, well, I mean, we've got a budget of $240 million, so, I mean, it's always a very, very significant achievement just to be able to get that all balanced. But there are a range of priority projects in there that I think next year are going to be very exciting for our community, not least of which, of course, are some of the very large capital works programs that we're going to be starting. Emil Madsen Reserve up there in Mount Eliza is going to be huge. Some of the work that we're going to be doing on a new performing arts centre, the early development work on that, which is going to be very, very interesting for a lot of councillors as well, and indeed for our community, so we're pretty excited about that. Workplace of the future, and then finally, of course, a major investment in our IT infrastructure, which is going to allow us to deal with our community much more quickly than we have been up until now.
SES Sorrento has warned Peninsula residents to prepare for the wet winter weather. We got some top tips about how to ready our homes from their Deputy Controller of Community Education and Events, Margaret Davis.
With this weather, it's really timely. So we want to make sure that people are looking around their properties and where they live, that they're trimming the trees around their property, they're cleaning their gutters. They're looking at their playground equipment and their trampolines, making sure that they're nice and secure. Outdoor furniture needs to be secure. All these things are not only important to protect those objects, but also to protect your property.
Ryan Bastanak of the Pearsdale Football Club has taken to Twitter to call out violence in the local game. The former North Melbourne and Brisbane midfielder was left with a gash over his eye after an on-field incident during last week's match against Langwarrin. Bastanek alleges he was assaulted and told his Twitter followers that coward hits in local footy are not on in this day and age. Investigations into the incident continue, with match tapes being reviewed by the judiciary. And Frankston Arts Centre's annual open exhibition competition is now on. The theme this year is belonging. All visual arts mediums are welcome, and artists have the chance to win $1,000 in prize money and their own exhibition and opening event in 2023. Details are on the Frankston Arts Centre website, and entries close on the 10th of July. After the break, we have David Robertson with this month's Bendigo Bank Market Update.
Everyone knows Australia has 4 big banks, but the 5th biggest retail bank is snapping at their heels. It's a bank that's been around for over 160 years, can be found in over 500 locations nationwide, looks after over 1.8 million customers, and is regularly voted one of the most trusted brands out of all the thousands of brands in Australia. Who is this fantastic number 5? Yep, it's Bendigo Bank. The better big bank.
Established in 1988, Progress Signs has been servicing the local community for 30 years. Located on the Mornington Peninsula, they are the #1 destination for all your signage needs, specialising in a variety of signage from vehicles to shop fronts, occasional and corporate events, short-term, long-term, and everything in between. If it's signs you need, be it large or small, Progress Signs is the place to call. Available 24/7 at progress-signs.com.au or call the team on 5975 9188. Thinking signs? Think Progress Signs, a station sponsor.
The global energy and inflation shock continues to gather pace, leaving policymakers in a most challenging position. The latest outlook globally and locally as we approach the end of financial year. Global factors continue to drive the domestic economy and decision-making for our Reserve Bank, who have finally conceded the need to act more urgently in the face of ever-increasing supply issues and price pressures. The June rate hike of 50 basis points wasn't a surprise when compared to other central banks who are also lifting rates 0.5% at a time, including the US Federal Reserve, the Bank of Canada and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. But it was a very different message to earlier in the year when the RBA was dismissive of the need to lift rates at all. So the hard part lately has been forecasting what the RBA board would decide to do as opposed to what they needed to do. Recent RBA forecasts for CPI to peak just under 6% and core inflation not to exceed 5% appear at risk of being far too low. So the RBA was right to front-load rate hikes and act more decisively. Monetary policy is a very blunt tool, so to have any chance of slowing inflation, they needed to get ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, this tactic will impact the economy. Its aim is to reduce household demand and consumer spending, at the same time that the economy is trying to reopen, but while businesses are dealing with labour shortages and higher input costs. Fortunately, domestic demand is relatively strong, including demand for labour, with unemployment down to 3.85% and May job advertisements at another record high. So the economy was in sound shape going into this global downturn, ahead of the sharp increases in energy and commodity prices. GDP growth was a healthy 0.8% in the first quarter of the year, on top of the upwardly revised 3.6% for the previous quarter. So our economy ended up growing 4.5% in 2021 and is still expected to grow near trend this year, despite the more aggressive pace of RBA rate hikes. 2023 will see much slower growth as we try to cope with an RBA cash rate above 2%. But unlike North America and many parts of Europe that may be headed back into recession, the strength in our jobs market, the strong trade surplus and high levels of household savings should improve the chances of achieving a soft landing for our economy. Higher interest rates will impact property and equity markets and all asset values, with a decline in residential property of around 10 to 15% widely expected from peak to trough. Again, a soft landing in the context of recent price increases, but a challenging period for households to adjust to higher borrowing costs and businesses to deal with labour shortages. In the latest CoreLogic data for May, the median price of a house fell nationally by 0.1%, but with a remarkably wide range of outcomes. Down 1% in Sydney and 0.7% in Melbourne, but still up impressively in the other capital cities, and up 0.5% in regional Australia in May, 22% year on year. From here, we do face a period of ongoing global uncertainty and rising interest rates and higher inflation. So, while yields on many assets may remain attractive, real capital appreciation will be much harder to achieve than during the last few decades of falling rates and benign inflation. And that's the market update from Bendigo Bank.
We go now to Nicola with this week's weather report.
Hello, Nicola here with the RPP weekly weather update. Well, the rain has been persistent over the last week. Let's see if that trend will continue this week. Today, Sunday, the 12th of June, saw a very cloudy day with 90% showers across the peninsula, with a minimum of 8 and a top of 12. Monday sees the rain easing with a low of 7 and a top of 13. Tuesday sees much the same as Monday, with more possible rainfall. We can expect a low of 6 and a top of 13. Wednesday the 15th of June sees 70% chance of showers, with a low of 8 and a high of 14. Thursday sees the showers continuing, with a top of 15 and a low of 9. Friday sees a 50% chance of rain across the peninsula, with a low of 8 and a top of 15. And finally, Saturday sees the rain easing again, with mostly a cloudy day, bringing us a low of 8 and a high of 14. Well, that's all for now. Try to stay dry if you can, and I will see you again next week.
And now to our surf guru Muzz with the surf report.
Hey guys, it's Muzz here with this week's Mornington Peninsula Surf Report. It's pretty chilly at the moment, just been for a surf myself, and what you're looking at behind me is pretty much the order of what this week's going to be. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday, it's pretty much going to be west, maybe southwest more likely, and wind swell in Western Port Bay. Like, it's pretty average, but there will be waves. So that'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday. Then the wind will swing around Tuesday, Wednesday, and the swell will drop very, very quickly with it. So I'd suggest probably Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week we'll get back on the beaches. There is waves, there will be swell, it will be cold, there will be rain, there will be people because it's a long weekend, but you will get wet. So that's, there's a whole bunch of positives. So hopefully you enjoyed, have a long weekend. If you're heading up the snow, it's just absolutely pumping. I know a lot of crew from the peninsula are going there. And if you're not and you're hanging around home, you will get a surf. All right, so have fun, and I'll see you next week.
And that's all from our team here at RPP News, serving the community with stories that matter to you. Keep watching and do tell your friends. Bringing you the news from coast to coast across Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula, I'm Catie Sharp. See you for the next edition.